and just really enjoying this sort of sensual, tactile place. And so it was both this teaching of like, enjoy that pleasure, enjoy that enjoyment, be good to yourself, be sensual with yourself. So, creative soul, you've had an awakening. Maybe you've had a creative awakening, maybe you've had a spiritual awakening, and now you're wondering, well, what next? Awakenings can be so freaking beautiful. We can just have this beautiful experience of clarity. The body feels alive, the body feels full of really exciting emotion. And then in the aftermath of that awakening, we can be left with a sense of like, oh, I've been left by what came to me. And it can happen when we have a creative awakening, it can happen when we have a spiritual awakening. Like, for example, I used to manage a retreat for writers, and every week we would run a new retreat. We ran about 46 retreats a year. So there were 16 to 20 people every week who would come to the retreat, and most of them had some kind of awakening in that retreat. They woke up to the fact that their life wasn't the way that they wanted it to be. They woke up to the fact that they truly were a creative soul and they wanted to commit to their writing. They woke up to the fact that they hadn't been listening to their passion or their true self, and they now wanted to listen to their passion and true self. And of course, what then happens is they would go home back to their same old life, and there would be a sense of all of that energy and enthusiasm that had come in during that retreat, then suddenly left. And what can happen after we have a spiritual awakening? We can have a sense of like, I saw the truth, I saw my potential, I saw the life, the destiny that is waiting for me. But then we get left with this really flat feeling of like, well, now what? How am I going to make it happen? Like, I felt so great last week and now I just feel really exhausted. So what I wanted to explore today as I came into the forest, you know, for me, the forest is such a symbol of my own awakening that happened last year as a result of my burnout, when I started to wake up to wanting to live and work in a different way. And so my awakening started to begin with a sense that trees were reaching out to me, trees were communicating with me. And of course, yes, I had exactly the same experience. I had a couple of visions in my meditations where I had these beautiful, explosive, panoramic visions of trees, and I heard in my mind, you know, we're waiting for you, we've got something for you. And then it seemed like everything went quiet. And what then started to happen was my fear kicked in. I was like, what is this? I'm getting a message that I'm some kind of tree goddess, but that doesn't really fit in today's society. That doesn't really fit into my life. So what's really important after we've had that awakening, after we've woken up to, I really want to live my life in a different way, we've then got to start taking step by step. So we're figuring out, how do I stay aligned to the truth or the download or the idea that came to me in that awakening? And also, how do I stay tapped in so that channel is open so I can still feel that creativity, or I can still feel that spirituality coming to me? So some of that is about really understanding how you created the conditions for your awakening in the first place, and we'll explore that in today's video. But also the other side of it is about how you step in and really make sure that you're regularly in connection with the source of where that awakening came from. So if it was a creative awakening, like if you've really woken up to a creative desire, you want to create content, you want to write a book, you want to create videos, it's about understanding, what do I need to do to maintain that channel so I can still experience those creative insights and impulses. And if it's more of a spiritual awakening, again, it's how can I maintain that channel to spirit so I still feel that those downloads are coming to me. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do what my practice is when I come into the forest to really maintain that awakened state. So I'm essentially creating the conditions for that awakened state to continue. But we're also going to seek out a beautiful tree and see if the tree has any wisdom to really add into this video, any insight for that moment when we're like, okay, I've woken up to something, but what the heck do I do now? So let's go. So let's talk about this idea of creating the conditions or recreating the conditions. So you've come out of that awakening phase and you're looking to see, how can I maintain this clarity or this beautiful flow of inspiration or creativity? How can I stay connected to my path? So for some of us, when we have an awakening, and this was as it was in my case, it can come out of a pretty negative space. So you might be like, Gabriela, why are you telling me to maintain the conditions when the conditions I was in when I had my awakening were really crummy? But what you want to explore there is to really remember what came through to you when you were in that crummy place. So for example, for me, I started to have very deep awakening sensations as I was burning out. So of course I don't want to recreate the burnout conditions, but what I do want to do is recreate the visions and the ideas and the downloads that were coming to me, which was very much about spending time in nature. Like that's what I kept seeing. At the end of a day when I was really exhausted and I was wondering, why am I doing what I'm doing? I just kept having this longing for the forest. So for me, that's why I'm out here today, to continue to recreate the conditions of being in the forest, being in nature. Now, for others of you watching, you might have had an awakening when you were on a retreat. As I said, there were lots of people who came to the writing retreat that I managed, and they would have these huge awakenings as to, this is the kind of relationship I want, this is how I want to live my life, this is the kind of book I want to write. And so again, you're looking, well, what were the conditions on the retreat? There was a lot of silence, there was a lot of really lovely food, there was a lot of really nutritious conversation, there was a lot of writing, there was a lot of creative practice. So that's what I'm out here in the forest to explore as well, like the aspects of my creative practice that I connect with every day to maintain those conditions, to keep the channel to my creativity open. So I'm going to be doing some journaling, I'm going to be doing some meditation, and also just really enjoying the experience of being in nature. And then we are going to find a tree and we're going to get some juicy wisdom. I just remembered that I packed these intention cards, and so I'm going to pick one of these cards and do some journaling. Like usually I might just come out to the forest and journal, but every so often I pack a little extra something. And these are Julie Riesler's cards, and she is my absolute favourite soul. There's an interview on the channel with her. So I'm going to do a little bit of journaling and pick a card and see what the message is. Really pleased with this card that I picked. So the card is kindness. And when I picked the card, I really had that intention of what next after we've had a spiritual or a creative awakening. And what dropped in immediately as I saw that card is, and I've done this myself, where I've had this beautiful moment of insight. Maybe I've had this really profound meditation and like something massive has dropped in and I've had this like really incredible burst of inspiration, and then like I wake up the next day and I feel flat. And I'm not kind to myself. I start beating myself up for having lost the inspiration, or I start beating myself up for the fact that I can't hear my spirit guides speaking to me. So I love this card for kindness, with that specific guidance of like, what do we do next after an awakening? And there's a journal prompt here. How can I be more kind to my mind? And I can really resonate with that. Like I start mentally beating myself up You know, you like last week you had an awakening and now you feel really crap, like you're not a good spiritual soul, you're not a worthy creative, and I start really getting quite negative with myself. So this kindness is so important, to be gentle. Like if the connection to the inspiration has broken, or if you suddenly feel really alone after having profound spiritual connection, just step into that place of kindness with yourself, but also, as this card says, ways to show acts of kindness to other people too. Like sometimes that kindness of spirit can really open our heart, and sometimes it's that closed heart that really stops the spiritual awakening from continuing. We shut ourselves off to energy, we shut ourselves off to vibration and connection. And there's a lovely declaration here. Kindness is a kind of wisdom. And so again, what comes to me is like when we're kind to ourselves, we're then allowing ourselves the opportunity to receive wisdom. So I'm going to journal on this for a bit and just really enjoy the space that I'm experiencing here at this lovely, beautiful spot. And then we are going to head to this lovely tree. I've visited her before, Esmeralda. She is the first tree to have told me her name, so I'm excited to see her again and also to introduce you to her. This is Esmeralda, and like I said, she's the first tree that has told me her name, and it happened after my first experience with her, when she gave me a really beautiful message, and afterwards she said, "Oh, and by the way, I'm Esmeralda." And she said, "The reason you can hear me is because of how much you love yourself." And I can't tell you, like, it was profoundly exciting to actually have a tree tell me their name. Like, I'm still trying to figure that out. What does that mean? But also that message of, because of this self-love that I've been cultivating within myself, it takes me into a place where I can tune in. And I think that's also really important when it comes to how we navigate this sort of post-awakening, to really cultivate that love or that gratitude within us, to keep us at that high frequency so that we can continue to receive downloads and inspiration. So it feels really good to be around her. Like I can already feel just this love and excitement just from being around her. So I know that there's like going to be a nice connection today. And I'm really going to go to her with this question, like, hey Esmeralda, there's a lot of us out here who are waking up, there are a lot of us out here who are seeing that we want to live differently. And what do we do? What do we do once we've had this creative or this spiritual awakening? Like, how do we stay on that path? And how do we start to really align ourselves with the truth that is now available to us? So let's go see what she has to say. So nice. This just feels so nice. This is just so nice. like, have you ever had that feeling when you're with someone and you're just like, this is just so nice, like how can I just get inside you? Like, how can I squeeze you more? And so perfect. Such a beautiful message. Yeah, it really feels. When I first came over and I had my hand, I think I just had my hand here, and I saw my hand actually going into the tree, and what came to me then was a sense of, after we've woken up to our creativity, our potential, our spirit, we want to climb into that experience so that that becomes our reality, so that we don't keep going back to that old version of reality that our thoughts want to take us to. So I really got this sense of like, whatever your awakening so far has taught you or shown you, like, what would it really be to imagine like climbing right into that world and just committing to living in that world and it being your reality? And then as I had my hand here, she said, Esmeralda said, quieten, what did she say? Quieten down, my love. And I knew, like, I knew my mind was a bit busy. Like, I had done a little bit of meditation and I was like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. Like, I need to have that silence within. And I think that's another vital bit of teaching, that we have to commit to silence once we've had that awakening, because we have to have that space for the new to come in, whether it's new creative ideas, whether it's inspiration, whether it's connection to great spirit. We have to have that practice of silence. And so it's non-negotiable. It's an everyday practice of settling the mind. And so what it means is, when I come to an experience like this and I have an instruction to settle down, my love, it's like, great, I know how to just silence the mind. And I'm not saying, switch it off completely so there's no thoughts, but I know how to send those thoughts into the background. So the noise just becomes like the bird song, and so that I can have my attention on something else. So that was lovely. And then I could feel her really drawing me in. Like, I think I started by pressing my third eye to her. And I did that because, to be honest, that's what I did last time. But I was like, no, more. And I just started to press my whole body to her. And that's when I really sunk into just this, I can only describe it as just like this pure experience of exquisiteness. Like, I felt just so like, and just relaxed and just lush. And the words enjoy and pleasure came to me. Enjoy pleasure, enjoy enjoyment, take pleasure from pleasure. And I think that felt like another really beautiful experience, that when we have that awakening, it's taking us to new levels of joy or love or creativity. And it's to allow ourselves to come into that place of enjoyment or pleasure. Like, if you're anything like me, I spent so much of my life in such a negative place and giving myself such a hard time, that when I first began to experience exquisite, divine love through my spiritual practice, I kept dropping it like a hot potato because it was so strange for me. So it has been a huge practice to get to a place where I can allow these gorgeous feelings to come into me and just really enjoy them. And yeah, like, I was running my hands over her, and it felt both like I was running my hands over a being, but also it felt like I was running my hands over myself as well. So I was kind of massaging myself and feeling myself through feeling her, and just really enjoying this sort of sensual, tactile place. And so it was both this teaching of like, enjoy that pleasure, enjoy that enjoyment, be good to yourself, be sensual with yourself. Yeah, to really just to allow that to happen. And the final thing that came in, it actually came in the middle, but I've only just remembered when the cyclist came past, because as I saw the cyclist, I was like, I'm so happy to be seen, like hugging this tree and making this video. But earlier on, when I first came to Esmeralda and I was aware of Liam, the cameraman, being here, I felt really self-conscious. There was a moment when I was like, oh, what's everyone on YouTube going to think? And again, it was really easy to drop that thought, but it was another reminder that when we have these awakenings, when we wake up to the truth of ourselves, we can feel self-conscious. We can be like, oh my God, now that I'm a tree goddess, great, but like, how am I going to tell people about it? Or whatever you're waking up to. So it's to understand that that self-consciousness will be there, but we've got to drop it. We cannot let it stop us. So very much in the way that I was like, oh, I saw the self-consciousness. I understood that that's no longer a part of my identity to be self-conscious, because I'm fully committed to my creative and my spiritual destiny. I'm fully committed to being a tree goddess. But it was a great lesson to be like, this needs to be shared for all of you who feel nervous about sharing where you're at or sharing the truth. Firstly, be careful with who you share it with. Like, share when you feel safe. Like, I feel, for me now, I feel like such a place of love in my heart and joy for this journey that I'm on, that I can just sort of bat away that self-consciousness. I don't want it to stop me. But you may not be ready yet. You may not be in a place where you feel safe to share. So find someone or something that you feel safe to share with and go easy, but let the self-consciousness go and replace it with just a pleasure to step into this identity that's beginning to reveal itself to you. So there we go, my loves, my gorgeous creative souls. Esmeralda has just, she's been so divine to be with today. And to be honest, this is the third time I've visited Esmeralda, and each experience has been different. So it's really showing me that just like us in human form, we have our ups and we have our downs, we have our good moments and we have our more quiet moments. Last time I was with Esmeralda, she was quite quiet. So I had no idea what to expect. I certainly didn't expect I was going to have this really in-depth, sensual, pleasurable experience, but it has been really lovely. And I hope that there's been something in today's video that has given you a little gift about your what next after your creative or your spiritual awakening. But let me know in the comments below. Let me know what landed with you. Let me know what didn't land with you. Let me know what questions you have, and let me know what further help and guidance you need. What videos do you need for me to create for you that is going to help you on your beautiful path? Stay true to it, my friend. Stay aligned to what is calling you. And I will see you in the forest in my next video. Take care.